Dad ruins my dreams for my little brother, sweetheart, and refuses to pay for my education. But then, I'm 32 years old, and I have a younger brother, 28. We grew up with our father, who is now 56. From the very beginning of middle school, my father always favored my brother, and over time, I got used to it. I was never the son my father wanted because, unlike him, I didn't get into sports or typical male activities. I was always more interested in what is usually considered feminine: cooking, reading books, and even singing. My father tried to get me to play soccer with him, but I couldn't do it, and gradually we grew apart. My brother, on the other hand, was exactly the son my father wanted: strong, fearless, never afraid of getting dirty or even getting injured. He was the perfect son for my father, and it was clear that Dad loved my brother much more than me. He always spoke of him with admiration, while I never received any such words. My mother, however, treated us equally and was fair to both of us, and that's why I loved her more. I really tried to build a relationship with my father and spend time with him, but after we became distant, he didn't show any interest in restoring our bond. Unfortunately, the glue that held us together was cancer, and by the time we discovered it, it was already too late to do anything. She passed away before we could even realize it. My mother's death literally shattered me, and during that time, I drifted. My only comfort was cooking, and I cooked something new every day as if my life depended on it. My mom was a fantastic cook, and she often told me that if she hadn't been forced to take over her father's business, she would have probably become a chef. So cooking became the only thing that brought me comfort because my father and brother didn't help me with my emotions. They suppressed any reaction to my mother's death and, if anything, grew even further away from me. While in normal families, such tragedies usually bring people closer, my passion for cooking enraged my father, and he constantly told me to get out of the kitchen and do something more masculine. One day, when his patience ran out, he told me that if he ever saw me in the kitchen again, he'd make me do all the household chores. He told me to be like my brother and get a real job. That led to a huge argument where I told him that he never loved me, and he agreed. That was, in fact, the last time we had such an open conversation, because after that, I stopped trying to earn his affection, and he didn't show any interest in me either. Over the next few years, I spent all my time in my room listening to music and studying new recipes. I was determined to pursue a career as a chef, not just for myself but for my mother as well. Meanwhile, I only communicated with my father when necessary. My brother also didn't pay much attention to me and ignored me just like my father did. After my mother's death, I essentially had no one to rely on. Finally, when it was time to apply for college, I decided to submit applications to several top culinary schools and some regular colleges. I wasn't sure if my father would agree, but I had to try. That summer, I secretly did an internship at a restaurant, gaining experience, and managed to get a recommendation letter, which helped a lot. Eventually, I was accepted into several schools, including one of the best in France. I was thrilled that it finally happened, but at the same time, I was nervous because I had to ask my father for permission to go. I was ready to beg him if he hesitated, as I couldn't let go of my dream under any circumstances. So I told my father about it. I was prepared for him to refuse me because he always thought that cooking wasn't a masculine profession. But I was completely unprepared for him to refuse to pay for my education. I still remember how shocked I was. My father wasn't poor at all, he had enough money to send me to France, but the issue wasn't money. The reason was that if I went to France and got into such a prestigious school, it would make my younger brother feel insecure. He already had trouble with his studies and couldn't motivate himself, so my father wanted me to go to a local college or find a way to pay for my education myself. I was stunned that my father could be so cruel to his own son and I didn't know what to say. I tried to explain that it was very important to me, but he was adamant and categorically refused to pay for my education. He even said that my brother's well-being was his top priority, and he didn't want me to compete with his golden child. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't imagine any other father in the world destroying their child's dreams for the sake of their favorite child. After a long argument and tears, where he still refused to budge, I had a huge fight with him, said a lot of harsh words, and left his house forever. I moved in with my aunt, my mother's older sister. The only reason I didn't move earlier was that I found comfort in the house where I grew up with my mother, and I didn't want to change schools, which I would have had to do if I moved in with my aunt, as she lived far from my high school. I told her everything, how my father refused to pay for my education and that I needed her help. It was terrible to ask her for such a huge sum of money since she wasn't as rich as my father, but she assured me she would cover all my expenses. Somehow, she managed to work out a deal with her friends, and together they helped send me to the culinary school of my dreams, for which I will always be grateful. When I got there, I worked part-time and tried to use all my time to make up for the money spent on me. I worked hard and gradually moved forward. When I finished my studies, I was one of the most talented chefs in the school and found a job just a few months after graduating. I worked in a prestigious French restaurant and sent half of my salary to my aunt to gradually pay her back the money she loaned me. I was lucky I didn't have to take out student loans, otherwise, I might never have been able to pay them off. I worked in France for several years and then, after saving enough money to open my own restaurant, I returned to the US. A few years later, I worked as a chef in another restaurant while still striving to open my own. Everything was finally arranged a few weeks ago, and I was able to open the restaurant I had been working toward for so long. Two of my friends I met in France also joined my business as co-owners, so I was very happy when they let me choose the name for the restaurant. Since we were all from the same state, we all agreed to open our establishment in the city I had chosen. I decided to name the restaurant after my mother, which turned out to be a lucky coincidence because she had a very beautiful and rare name for our town. Everything finally fell into place. A few days ago, we held a small party for a select group of guests before the official opening. Of course, I invited my aunt and a few of her friends who had also helped pay for my education. I also invited a couple of school friends, but that was all. I didn't invite my father and brother for obvious reasons. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't have invited them because I hadn't spoken to them since I left home, and they had never tried to contact me. I think it was better this way, but it was to be expected that they would still show up to claim part of my success, and that's exactly what happened. They showed up an hour before the party started, but they weren't stopped by the security because we shared the same last name, and they said they came to surprise me. At least that was true. I was definitely surprised when I saw them. My father and brother greeted me as if nothing bad had ever happened between us, and they were incredibly friendly to me. For the first time in my life, I froze when they entered the restaurant. My friends noticed something was off and politely greeted my relatives, leaving us alone. I'm grateful to them for sensing my discomfort. I still hadn't recovered from the shock when, suddenly, they presented me with a gift, a portrait of my mother. My father even said that he ordered it specifically for me to hang it in my restaurant. As soon as he heard that a new trendy restaurant with such a name opened in our city, he immediately knew it was me. He even added that he had always known I had talent. My brother also joined in with the praise, saying he was extremely proud of me. I couldn't believe my ears, and I immediately realized something wasn't right. I remained silent, waiting for them to get to the point because I knew they had a reason for being there. Eventually, they stated their goal. It turned out that my brother now worked as a bartender, and only because my father convinced his friend to hire him at his club. My brother's grades had been falling throughout school and college, so he never managed to land a well-paying job, which my father had always hoped for. Moreover, he also started slacking off during school football matches, which is why he couldn't get an athletic scholarship. Ironically, in the end, he went to a community college that no one really strives to attend because no other school would accept him. They wanted me to make my brother a partner in my business so he could have a more respectable position, even though he hadn't done anything for it. I barely held back my laughter but somehow managed to stay composed and told them I'd think about it. Of course, I had no intention of thinking about it. I just didn't want to refuse them immediately. I wanted them to stay at the party because I had a better plan to humiliate my family, who came out into the light as soon as they heard about my success. They seemed pleased, but oh my god, they had no idea what awaited them. After a while, the guests started arriving, and after an hour, all the invited guests were at the restaurant. I spent the evening talking to the guests, and my father and brother were also wandering around talking to everyone. I even heard them boast about me to some guests, and I was amazed by their audacity. Towards the end of the evening, it was time for a toast from the hosts, meaning me and my partners. My friends spoke first because I wanted to save the best for last, and finally, it was my turn. That day, I decided to say everything I had on my mind. I started by thanking all my guests and raising a glass to my mother because it was thanks to her that I achieved so much. I've always believed that it was her faith in me since childhood that gave me the confidence I have today, and that feeling stayed with me even after she passed. After honoring her, I got to the part where I needed to address my father and brother. I mentioned that I had to borrow money from my aunt and her friends to attend culinary school and thanked them for their help. Finally, I got to the point of why I needed to borrow money for my education in the first place. It was because of my family. I told everyone how I grew up with a father who never loved me, didn't believe in me, and constantly scolded me for having interests like cooking. And about my younger brother, who was the spitting image of my father. I told everyone how my father refused to pay for my education because he feared I would become more successful than his favorite son, my younger brother, which is why I left home. But despite all the hardships, I managed to rise and become who I am today, so in a way, they deserve some gratitude for the obstacles I had to overcome. Otherwise, I would never have realized how strong I am. While I was saying this, many guests gave my father and brother angry looks, and even they had enough sense to at least pretend to feel ashamed. Although I knew that wasn't the case. Nonetheless, I went up to my father and brother and hugged them, playing the same scene they did when they came here. Why not? You can play this game too. I announced that since they came to celebrate my success, I forgave them for everything that had happened in the past and even offered my brother the position of bartender in my restaurant. To everyone, it looked like a touching reconciliation, and at the end of my speech, people even started clapping, and some whistled. Only my family and I knew that this was nothing more than an attempt to humiliate them, and I succeeded. But they had to smile and pretend they were immensely grateful for my offer, because they couldn't just walk away in anger, even though that's what they wanted to do. A while later, when the guests left, and it was time to go home, my father and brother approached me right outside the restaurant. They were furious, and I swear my brother had angry tears in his eyes. They demanded an explanation for what I had done and said that if I wasn't going to make my brother a partner, I could have just kicked them out right away. I laughed and told them this was my way of paying them back for everything they had done to me over the years and that this was exactly what they deserved. Then I turned around and left, not even looking back when I heard my brother shouting that this was the cruelest thing anyone had ever done to him. He even shouted that I would regret this, but I didn't care because I was already getting into my car and driving away. This happened a couple of days ago, and since then, I haven't heard anything from them. My aunt thinks I might have gone too far and should have just kicked them out from the beginning, but I disagree with her. They deserve this, and I don't regret humiliating my father and brother at all. Update 1. I decided not to contact my family to apologize. Even though my aunt thinks I was too harsh, I don't feel guilty for what I did, and I'm not going to pretend I regret it or try to justify myself. They had the chance to apologize when they came, but they didn't. I explained this to my aunt, and although she still thinks I shouldn't have done it this way, she doesn't bring it up anymore. I suppose this is one of those situations where we just have different opinions, and I'm fine with that. To other news, of course, my brother has been talking behind my back to our school friends, trashing me. Unfortunately, we went to the same school, so now different people are messaging me to confirm the rumors about how I allegedly humiliated and kicked my father and brother out of the restaurant intentionally, feeding them 3-day-old food. Yes, he exaggerated the story to make himself look like a victim, which is not surprising. Usually, I don't care about such petty rumors, but I don't want potential clients to take them seriously, so I texted my brother that if he doesn't stop spreading lies about me and my restaurant, I'll make sure he loses his current job. I hope this works because I have no desire to get involved in this nonsense right now. I've got too much work to do, and this is definitely not the time for these problems. Update 2. My brother replied saying he would stop only when I make him a partner. I don't even understand what level of idiocy and delusion he's living in. Also, if he wants to be a partner, doesn't it seem a bit silly to trash the very restaurant he's trying to join? I'm absolutely sure this is my father's tactic to get his favorite son a prestigious job by doing nothing useful, but unfortunately for them, it won't work with me. I told my brother that if he doesn't stop, he'll be talking to my lawyers, and right now he's not in a position to dictate terms to me. The only reason I haven't done anything yet is because I don't want to get into unnecessary drama. But if he tries anything again, I'll definitely take action. Let him consider this a final warning. Update 3. So guys, it's been about a month since the last update. I've been very busy, and that's why I couldn't tell you what happened next. My brother really did stop trash talking me behind my back, but they still desperately tried to latch onto my success. A few weeks ago, my father decided to visit me with my brother to intimidate me. They came to my house and threatened to sue me for using my mother's name for my restaurant. They even said they had already talked to a lawyer. If I didn't want trouble, I should make my brother a partner as soon as possible. Of course, I immediately realized they were bluffing because no sane lawyer would take such a ridiculous case. It looks like they forgot one important fact: she was my mother too, and as far as I know, there's no law that would prevent me from using her name. By that point, I was already tired of them, and I told my father to get lost. But he only sent my brother to cool off in the car while he wanted to talk to me alone. After my brother left, my father tried to manipulate me by saying that if my mother knew what I was doing, she would be very disappointed. He tried to make me bury the hatchet. At that moment, I told him to leave me alone because even I have my limits. He can't use my mother to get his way, it's just low. And frankly, we've come too far for reconciliation. Not once during all this time did either of them even attempt to apologize to me. So, I honestly don't understand why they expected me to forgive them without an apology. As for how my mother would feel, I'm sure she would be just as disappointed when my father refused to pay for my education and every damn time he made me feel worthless. So he's the last person who should lecture me about what my mother would approve of or not. I know she's proud of me, wherever she is, and none of my father's words will change that. At least my restaurant is thriving, and I hope we can expand soon. Let me know what you think of this whole story in the comments. My opinion. The author of this situation is absolutely right. Personally, I don't think I could have staged such a scene in a restaurant, but why? Because I simply wouldn't have the guts to do it. But he took the risk and said everything to their faces. That's how it should be done with such people. He showed real strength and character. There's absolutely no judgment here for what he did. Anyway, thanks for watching this video until the end. Check out our previous video here and subscribe to our channel for more such stories. Good luck!